After 20 years of a marriage that felt like being widowed, I unexpectedly reincarnated. When I came back to life, I was in the midst of divorcing Ethan Shaw. All because he had been hiding something from me. He had hired his ex-girlfriend, Jiang Ness, into the company and promoted her to the position of financial director, bypassing all the rules. Because of her, Ethan Shaw and I had the most intense argument we had ever had. After he stormed out, I immediately rushed to the hospital and terminated the 3-month-old fetus in my womb. Upon seeing the calendar on the wall and realizing I had been reborn back to 1988, I struggled to my feet despite the throbbing pain in my head and stepped out of the bedroom. The living room was filled with the pungent smell of tobacco smoke. Ethan Shaw was leaning back on the sofa, his long legs casually draped over the coffee table, taking one drag after another, with smoke swirling around his fingertips. Perhaps due to pregnancy sensitivity or having been exposed to the same cigarette smell for over a decade, I suddenly began to vomit. Ethan Shaw, who was puffing away, heard the noise, turned to look at me, then slowly stood up and came over to me, revealing a sharp, angular face. But even then, the cigarette in his hand never went out. After vomiting until there was nothing left, I rinsed my mouth out and looked up at the mirror, seeing my still young reflection, and felt a moment of disorientation. It was the hottest time of the year in Savannah, and there wasn't a single breeze on the balcony. Ethan Shaw leaned against the railing, looking carefree and relaxed. Looking at him, I took a deep breath and said softly, "Ethan Shaw, let's get a divorce. Tomorrow at 10 in the morning, we'll go to the Civil Affairs Bureau to finalize the divorce. It'll save us both from torturing each other anymore." Without giving him a chance to speak, I lowered my eyelids and continued, "I know there's nothing between you and Jiang Ness, but I really don't want to argue with you over her anymore. I don't want to waste the next few decades of my life on you because it's not worth it." Seeing that Ethan Shaw remained silent, I looked up at him and said slowly, "I'll go to the hospital this afternoon to terminate the pregnancy. Let's part ways amicably. After the divorce, you can be with whoever you want, Jiang Ness or the young woman from your company, it's up to you." Hearing this, Ethan Shaw finally reacted. He stared at me intently, as if trying to read my thoughts. After a moment, he flicked the ash from his cigarette, tugged at the corner of his mouth, and sneered, "Emily, playing hard to get won't work on you." I didn't have the energy to argue with him. I just nodded and picked up my worn-out bag, ready to leave. Seeing that I was serious, Ethan Shaw grabbed my arm, suppressed his smile, and said with a grim expression, "Emily, stop this nonsense. You know very well that Ness and I are innocent. Do you have any idea how disgusting you look right now? My company is going through a critical period, and I don't have time to play these childish games with you. Besides, you have no job, no savings, and you want to abort my child. Who gave you the nerve? Could it be?" Thinking of something, he suddenly looked at me with a suspicious gaze. I broke free from his grip, turned around, and slapped him across the face, smiling coldly, "Ethan Shaw, do you know what I hate most about you? I hate how you're so full of yourself and think you know everything." In my previous life, Ethan Shaw had also told me countless times that he and Jiang Ness were innocent. But I had always dismissed his words as nothing more than a joke. Because I knew very well that they had always been using the guise of friendship to engage in ambiguous behavior. The company's subordinates teasing them, coincidentally drinking from the same glass of red wine, and accidental physical contact. Enjoying the thrill of ambiguity is a man's inherent weakness, and Ethan Shaw was no exception. I steadied my emotions, took a deep breath, and said firmly, "Divorce, I must have it. The child, I don't want either. Regarding the child in my womb, I admit I'm cruel, but I truly don't want to be destroyed by Ethan Shaw a second time. In my previous life, it took me nearly 10 years to realize that Ethan Shaw had never loved me. He pursued me and married me only because he had a grudge in his heart. Because Jiang Ness chose the son of the factory leader over him, he felt humiliated and, out of spite for Jiang Ness, was provoked by his rowdy friends into setting his sights on me. That year, 18-year-old Emily was beautiful and confident, with many suitors. She was the factory's acknowledged beauty and the first girl to wear a dress, high-heeled leather shoes, and big curls to work. Back then, I had imagined my future countless times, but it was all ruined by Ethan Shaw. After we got married, because I wasn't the woman he truly wanted to marry, and because there was never any love between us, he never cared about my feelings. At the time, I didn't understand. I just knew to throw things around hysterically to vent my anxiety, until I accidentally saw him with Jiang Ness. As soon as Jiang Ness divorced, he brought her into the company under the guise of friendship and secretly rented out the textile factory and the company-provided apartment he had given me to her. He called it renting, but I never saw a single penny. He was attentive to her every need, afraid of offending her in the slightest. Even when she was around, he would resist his urge to smoke. As his construction company grew larger and he became a wealthy man, he took her to various high-end venues and introduced her to his friends. His business partners never knew of my existence, they only knew that Jiang Ness was Ethan Shaw's most capable assistant and his confidant. Even when I accidentally tripped and fell down the stairs, before I was reborn, he was still accompanying her to a banquet, helping her expand her network, and planning to invest money to help her start a company. In Ethan Shaw's heart, I was just his possession, the mother of his child, the housewife who cooked for him at home, while Jiang Ness was the one who truly stood by his side, the one he truly wanted to marry, his first love. When facing me, Ethan Shaw would always say, "You don't understand," with a look of disgust and impatience on his face, always slamming the door and leaving. "Does it have to be this way?" He pinched his eyebrows, looking impatient. "Emily, you're already happy enough. I feed you well every day, you don't have to work, you don't have to act like a servant to entertain others. What more do you want?" Because my pregnancy didn't go well and I had a miscarriage, I had to quit my job at the textile factory at Ethan Shaw's urging and became a housewife. After the child was born, I was so busy I was on the verge of collapse, my hair falling out in clumps, and I couldn't even get a decent night's sleep. But to Ethan Shaw, all of this was taken for granted. In his eyes, I was just a useless person lying around at home doing nothing. For this reason, Ethan Shaw would tell everyone, "I'm working so hard outside that I don't even have time to rest," while she's enjoying a life of luxury at home. Even gods wouldn't have it as good as she does. While he belittled me and made me dependent on him, he praised Jiang Ness for her professional abilities. As my thoughts returned to the present, I covered my emotions and nodded repeatedly, "Yes, yes, I'm not satisfied. Let's just get the divorce papers sorted out as soon as possible. That way, you can go find a little woman who will depend on you completely." Ethan Shaw thought I was jealous, and a smirk appeared on his lips. He loosened his collar and said indifferently, "Since you're so determined to divorce, go ahead. Just don't come crawling back later." After saying that, he made an excuse about work and tried to leave. "Wait, before you go, sign the agreement first." After reading the agreement, he looked at me in disbelief, his dark eyes growing colder. His face turned grim as he clenched his teeth and said, "Emily, you're quite something." I smiled, "Same goes for you." Seeing Ethan Shaw hesitate to sign, I said with a mocking smile, "What's the matter? You can't bear to let me go, can you?" "Humph, you think too highly of yourself." Ethan Shaw had always been a chauvinist, especially when it came to me, he never backed down. He had never hesitated about me, only about the child in my womb. Thus, Ethan Shaw was provoked into signing the divorce agreement on the spot. Without giving him a chance to change his mind, I carefully put the agreement in my bag and then casually reminded him, "Tomorrow at 10 o'clock, the Civil Affairs Bureau." Before I could finish, the door slammed shut with a loud bang. That was the last sound of Ethan Shaw storming out in anger, clearly furious. After the divorce, Jiang Ness made a strong appearance, and Ethan Shaw and I had more than one heated argument about divorce. However, due to the persuasion of our elders and the growing child in my womb, the divorce never went through. I suppose he was certain I wouldn't dare to terminate the pregnancy, believing I loved him so much that I wouldn't abandon him, which is why he acted so recklessly. After a simple lunch, I went to the hospital. When I emerged from the hospital, the child in my womb was gone. In my previous life, this child was extremely sensitive due to the unhappiness of my marriage with Ethan Shaw. Whenever I even considered divorce, Ethan Shaw would threaten the child, saying I didn't want her anymore. Fearing she would be hurt again, I kept yielding to Ethan Shaw time and again. One mistake led to another. By the time I finally saw Ethan Shaw for who he truly was, I was no longer young. So I had no choice but to continue enduring with Ethan Shaw. Why should he achieve success and fame while I have to step aside to accommodate his relationship with Jiang Ness? As long as I don't divorce him, I will remain the legitimate Mrs. Shaw. Even without love, at least I have money and a privileged life, and my daughter will be the sole heir to his fortune. Now that I've been reborn, this weakness has been removed by my own hands. I only hope that in her next life, she can have a happy family with loving parents and not suffer for the rest of her life because of us. At this time, the national economy is booming and opportunities abound. I should cut my losses and return to being the brave and fearless Emily. Perhaps he didn't want to see me. Ethan Shaw didn't come back all night. The next day at the Civil Affairs Bureau, when I called him, he had just woken up, and I could faintly hear the sound of a woman's laughter on the other end of the phone. It was Jiang Ness's voice. "Emily, can you stop causing trouble? I stayed up all night last night and just signed a big contract. I'm really tired right now." Hearing this, I took a deep breath and mocked, "Tired? I think you're just tired enough to go to bed. Ethan Shaw, since we're already getting divorced, can't you wait a little longer? Why do you have to be so cruel to me?" Hearing my words, the staff at the Civil Affairs Bureau exchanged glances, looking as though they had heard some juicy gossip. Ethan Shaw on the other end of the phone lost his patience. He snorted derisively and gritted his teeth, saying, "Emily, you're just using the child in your womb to manipulate me, aren't you? You calculated that I wouldn't divorce you because of the child, so you're causing a scene to seek attention, right? Because of the child in your womb, I've already given you enough face. Don't push it too far, after all, you're quite annoying." Ethan Shaw was too arrogant, always thinking he was right and never reflecting on himself. I didn't want to argue with him anymore, so I spoke the truth. "That's too bad, because the child you're talking about is gone. It was lost yesterday at 3 in the afternoon. As soon as I finished speaking, I heard Jiang Ness's agonized screams. Ethan Shaw pushed her aside and was on his way to the Civil Affairs Bureau. Ethan Shaw arrived half an hour later. "Emily, how dare you?" He reeked of smoke and alcohol, his eyes bloodshot, his face contorted in rage. I waved my hand and moved away from him. I retorted sternly, "Why wouldn't I dare? You're the one who's been keeping a mistress on the side, someone you abandoned in the past. Compared to you, who's so brainless and heartless, I'm just a small fish in a big pond. I've already told you it's not true. I promoted Jiang Ness because she has the qualifications and meets the requirements of our company's hiring criteria. Why are you insisting on making things up?" Ethan Shaw calmed down, furrowed his brow, pinched his nose, and looked utterly helpless, making me seem like the one causing a scene. As bystanders opened their mouths to intervene, I coldly said, "The factory welfare housing, the lipstick stain on your shirt, the perfectly coordinated couple's outfit, every single detail. Which one of these am I wrong about?" Ethan Shaw was speechless for a moment, but quickly regained his usual sharpness, implying, "So you aborted my child over these misunderstandings? Emily, how could you be so cruel? As for Jiang Ness, I have nothing to say, because I am innocent, and you are just being overly sensitive and making a mountain out of a molehill." He spoke as if it were all his right, as if my recent pain and breakdown were all my fault for making a mountain out of a molehill. But I know better than anyone else. Even if Ethan Shaw hasn't actually cheated, under Jiang Ness's deliberate advances, he's already started to indulge her, accepting her advances without hesitation. After all, she was his first love from his youth whom he couldn't have. Jiang Ness's fawning over him only makes him feel especially satisfied, as if he's someone important. "You're really wronging me. You signed the divorce agreement yourself. What right do you have to demand that I bear your children? It's broad daylight, what kind of daydream are you having?" As soon as the divorce agreement was brought out, Ethan Shaw became the target of everyone's criticism. "This is your own signature. Don't go back on your word. You set me up?" Staring at the agreement, Ethan Shaw looked stunned, though his tone was more questioning than doubtful. "No, I just came to my senses in time. Are you telling me that just for your child, I deserve to endure the hardships of pregnancy without any respect, and be treated like a useless waste of space? Don't forget that I used to be a clothing designer in the pattern-making department of a textile factory, earning at least $100 a month including commissions. Half of your startup capital came from me. Because of you, I've ended up like this. What do you have to offer in return? So you blame me?" He furrowed his brows, his eyes filled with confusion. Looking at Ethan Shaw, who still didn't see anything wrong with himself, I suddenly felt exhausted. I shifted my gaze, handed the divorce papers to the staff, and said slowly, "Shouldn't I blame you? You couldn't forget Jiang Ness, yet you still married me. Even when I was pregnant and sensitive, couldn't eat, and was always in a bad mood, you still couldn't let go of her. You even brought her into the company to make me jealous. Don't you think that's too much? Ethan Shaw, you're being too cruel." I couldn't hold it in anymore and lowered my head, crying out loud. After venting everything at once, the suffocating sensation in my chest finally subsided. Ethan Shaw, who was standing beside me, saw me crying and froze for a moment. Just as he was about to step forward, my repeated backward movements startled him, and he withdrew his raised left foot. After a moment, I managed to say in a hoarse voice, "Ethan Shaw, please let me go. Do you know how disgusting you look right now, constantly harassing me?" Ethan Shaw had always been arrogant. I had already said everything I could, so there was no way he would continue to harass me. So he sneered, glaring at me, and said harshly, "Divorce. Right now. Whoever doesn't divorce is a coward." The divorce proceedings were quick. Within minutes, Ethan Shaw, who had been gloomy throughout, turned and left as soon as he received the divorce certificate. I walked out of the Civil Affairs Bureau, looked at his departing figure, lowered my head and smiled lightly, then turned and walked in the opposite direction. After the divorce, I received $5,000 and the welfare housing unit where Jiang Ness had been living. Although it was unpleasant to think of her having lived there, the house was far more valuable than the cash. After all, in a few years, property prices in Savannah would skyrocket, and I would make a fortune. As news of my divorce from Ethan Shaw spread throughout the textile factory, Jiang Ness continued to act oblivious and refused to move out. I decided to hire a few burly men to help her move out of the staff compound, claiming it was to assist her, but in reality, they just threw all her belongings out. "Stop! What are you doing?" Jiang Ness, wearing a white shirt and a black pencil skirt, returned home after work and saw the mess outside. She flew into a rage. "Don't touch my things. This is trespassing. I'll call the police to arrest you." She stood in the doorway, blocking their way, but they didn't listen to her and pushed her aside. "Ma'am, please step aside. This is our job." "Oh, the mistress is back." Seeing that they were almost done, I crossed my arms and strolled out of the room. "I'm not the mistress. I'm innocent. What right do you have to accuse me like this?" Hearing me call her that, Jiang Ness shouted back. She looked as though she had been deeply insulted, her eyes red with anger, on the verge of tears. I remained unfazed, rolled my eyes at her, and said, "Give it a rest. If you're not Ethan Shaw's mistress, then why are you living here without paying a single penny?" Hearing me say this, the neighbors watching the scene began to whisper among themselves. So she really didn't pay any money. In that case, their relationship is definitely not normal. The mistress has moved in, no wonder Emily wants to divorce him. "Hey, stop talking. Ethan Shaw is coming." An older woman nudged someone and whispered. As Ethan Shaw approached, the area fell silent. He looked haggard after a few days, with unshaven stubble and a strong smell of smoke and alcohol. "Emily, do you really need to be so desperate?" Ethan Shaw immediately defended Jiang Ness. "Of course not. Just thinking about her living in my house makes me sick and uncomfortable." "You." Jiang Ness, feeling insulted, wanted to fight him on the spot but was stopped by Ethan Shaw. He looked straight at me, smiled faintly after a moment, and said, "All right, as you wish." After saying that, he turned to Jiang Ness and said in a gentle voice, "Ness, I'll find you a new place to stay. I promise it'll be better than this one." While Ethan Shaw was talking to Jiang Ness, his eyes kept drifting toward me for no apparent reason, as if he were provoking me. I didn't want to have anything to do with such a psychopath, so I turned my face away and happened to see Jiang Ness looking shy and blushing. For some reason, her entire face flushed a pale pink, and she smiled sweetly. "That's very kind of you. Ethan Shaw, thank you so much. Without you, I wouldn't know what to do." Right there, in front of me, the two of them began to exchange flirtatious words. Having experienced so much in my past life, I no longer cared. I shuddered and rolled my eyes. Disgusting. If you want to be all lovey-dovey, go somewhere else. Don't dirty my eyes here. Jiang Ness was swept away by me, and Ethan Shaw followed closely behind. Before leaving, he looked at me with a complex expression, and I even saw a hint of anger in his eyes. After hearing about my divorce from Ethan Shaw, my parents insisted I remarry him, threatening to disown me otherwise. Their threatening manner was identical to that of my previous life. Couples inevitably have their ups and downs. If everyone were like you, getting abortions and divorcing at the slightest provocation, wouldn't that be chaos? You're just too impulsive. Margaret kept hovering around me, sighing heavily. I couldn't take it anymore and spoke harshly. Mom, do you know that Ethan Shaw is still entangled with his ex? As soon as she divorced him, he rushed back to her. He's treated me so badly, why should I keep suffering? But that hasn't happened yet. Ethan Shaw said it himself, he was just helping out someone in trouble. Besides, after you got pregnant, you've been living in luxury at home, eating well, and we've never shortchanged you a penny. You're already happier than most people. There are so many things in this world. Just turn a blind eye and let it go. There's no need to be so stubborn. She sighed and continued, your father and I are getting old. In the future, the only people you can rely on are your children and Ethan Shaw. But you insist on. Sigh. Margaret looked distressed, as if I were the one who had done something wrong. Robert, standing beside her, also looked downcast and remained silent. After a long pause, he finally said, marriage isn't a game. If you can remarry, you should. I think that young man still cares about you, otherwise, he wouldn't have come to talk to us like that and treat me and your mother as his in-laws. Seeing that they were all under Ethan Shaw's spell, I lost the will to persuade them. I said firmly, it's impossible. I've already had the child aborted. How could I possibly start over with him? Everyone knows that once water is poured out, it can't be taken back. In my previous life, I lacked the courage, always hesitating and being easily swayed, which is why I missed my chance. If I were to live another life and take the same path, sacrificing myself, then I truly deserve it. Ever since I quit my job after getting pregnant, Ethan Shaw started looking down on me, constantly comparing me to that woman. He treated me like a toy, keeping me dependent on him. Not only did he support me, but he also supported his previous partner, fantasizing about having a harmonious family at home while pursuing other women on the side. He sure had a nice fantasy. I know that because of my divorce, the neighbors are all laughing at me. Rest assured, I'll leave Savannah in the next few days and only come back for the new year. You won't have to see me anymore. After the divorce, I decided to go to Washington, D.C. to make a new life. That way, I can stay away from Ethan Shaw and cut all ties with him. My parents and sister-in-law won't have to argue because of me anymore. Besides, there's an aunt on my mother's side who married into a family in Washington, D.C. So I won't be completely lost there. I bought a train ticket for tomorrow morning, and I've already rented out the house I was staying in. I haven't told anyone the exact time I'm leaving. Since I was in Savannah, a city experiencing rapid economic development, I made a special trip to the textile factory the day before I left to buy some new clothing wholesale to sell in Washington, D.C. I approached Hannah, the best friend I had made at the factory. She was the only one who didn't try to talk me out of leaving Savannah. Just because Ethan Shaw made money in business after we divorced, everyone said I was ungrateful, that I was incapable of keeping a man's heart. Good for you. That's exactly who you are. Hannah's single sentence gave me immense courage. Yes. I used to be someone who dared to try anything. After finalizing the partnership agreement and asking her to help collect rent, I went to a newly opened supermarket nearby and unexpectedly saw Ethan Shaw there. He was buying cigarettes, surrounded by a few sycophantic friends. Ethan, you're not really going to marry that Jiang Ness, are you? Everyone's been talking about you two behind your backs. Ethan Shaw froze for a moment, then his face turned ugly. What nonsense are you talking about? There's nothing between us. Noticing Ethan Shaw's mood, Jake quickly added, yeah, she's a divorcee. She's not good enough for you. Jake shouldn't have said that. It hit Ethan Shaw's most sensitive nerve. He kicked Jake's calf and shouted angrily, who are you talking about? Who's remarried? Ethan, don't misunderstand. I wasn't talking about you. Seeing that he had said that, Ethan Shaw still wouldn't let it go. Jake, who had dodged the kick, realized something and cautiously asked, "So, are you planning to remarry your ex-wife?" Seeing that Ethan Shaw didn't deny it, he opened his mouth wide in shock. Once he came to his senses, he immediately said, "Actually, your sister-in-law is really quite nice. She's good-looking and knows how to run a household. Getting back together would be a good idea. I heard that your sister-in-law hasn't found a job yet, and her family is all talking about her. Brother, you could take this opportunity to pursue her again when she's most vulnerable." However, before Ethan Shaw could speak, Tony interjected, "Why chase after her? You're just spoiling her. You're clearly never been married. You should know that women can't be spoiled. Once you spoil them, they'll ride you like a horse." Ethan Shaw pulled out a cigarette, lit it, and nodded slightly in agreement. "That's true." He curled his lips coldly and declared confidently, "So once she's had enough of the hardships and can't take it anymore, she'll come back to me. I've got all the time in the world." After paying the bill, the group walked away, chatting as they went. Once they were completely out of sight, I emerged from the corner, smiling sarcastically. The next morning, I packed my luggage and quietly made my way to the train station. After several days and nights on the train, I finally arrived in Washington, D.C. A week later, with the help of my aunt, I rented a small house near her alley and began my street vending life. Although street vending was tough, people in Washington, D.C. weren't short on money, and Southern-style clothes and small accessories were very popular here. The items on my stall were sold out in about 2 weeks. Seeing that I had recouped my costs and started making a profit, I called Hannah and asked her to send another batch of new designs by train. Over the phone, Hannah was also delighted to hear that the clothes were in high demand in Washington, D.C. After discussing business matters, she suddenly changed the subject and said in a lighthearted tone, "Emily, have you heard about Ethan Shaw and Jiang Ness?" Caught off guard by the mention of their names, I froze for a moment. During this busy and fulfilling period, I had stopped thinking much about the past, including my previous life. After all, one should live in the present. Having been given the opportunity to start over, there was no point in dwelling on the hardships of the past and wallowing in self-pity. I lowered my eyes and asked listlessly, "No, what's going on?" Seeing me ask, Hannah's curiosity was piqued, and she excitedly said, "After you left, Jiang Ness wanted to become the real boss's wife and started aggressively flirting with Ethan Shaw. But for some reason, Ethan Shaw has always been indifferent toward her. Recently, because of Jiang Ness's attempt to poison him, he fired her outright. Because of the drugs, Ethan Shaw ended up in the hospital, and Jiang Ness lost both her job and her reputation. She's now hiding at home, too ashamed to show her face." Hannah paused for a moment before adding, "By the way, Ethan Shaw's company has shifted its focus recently. I don't know who he's connected to, but he's planning to move to Washington, D.C. for development. If you don't want to get involved with him, you'd better be careful." "All right. Hannah, thank you." After hanging up the phone, I couldn't help but sigh, feeling nothing but trouble. Regarding Ethan Shaw's sudden career shift, I never hesitated to speculate with the worst intentions, as he has always been highly goal-oriented. I assume he must have found out about my whereabouts from my parents. I just couldn't understand why he wouldn't leave me alone. Was it because he couldn't get what he wanted? The winter in Washington, D.C. was bitterly cold. On the snow-covered streets, I started selling the hottest down jackets and cotton coats. Not wanting to be lectured by relatives and friends, I didn't plan to return to Savannah for the new year. I only sent my parents $300 as a holiday allowance. On the first day of the new year, I couldn't set up my stall. Instead, my aunt, who loved the good life, dressed me up nicely. I wore a light gray high-neck fitted knit sweater with a black coat, dark blue jeans, a pair of short boots, my hair simply pulled back to reveal a small section of my fair neck, and light makeup on my face. I looked elegant and sophisticated. After she replaced the ear studs on my ears with small pearl earrings, the old lady examined me from head to toe and said with satisfaction, "Money is never ending, but you're at the most beautiful age of your life. Don't waste this capital." It's because I didn't allow it back then. If I were younger, I'd definitely dress up nicely every day. Look at you, always in casual workout clothes. You're so unattractive. That's right, you were so fashionable back then. I agreed while wrapping my scarf around my neck. The old lady had great taste. After she dressed me up, I did look much more vibrant and attractive. I met Ethan Shaw at the entrance of the clothing store. I don't know if it was because of what the old lady said, but after browsing around, I ended up buying several outfits. We hope to see you again soon. As I walked out of the store with my bags, I bumped into Ethan Shaw, whose eyes were cold and sharp. Just one glance was enough to send a chill down my spine. The air turned icy, and everything around us fell silent. Within seconds, he strode over to me, gripped my wrist tightly, and refused to let go no matter how much I struggled. Ethan Shaw scanned me up and down, his face stern, and sneered, "Dressed up so flashily, you must have someone in mind, right? And you're smiling so brightly. Why are you making such a sour face the moment I show up? Do you find me repulsive? Let go!" His gaze was fierce, as if he wanted to tear me apart. Fearing I might truly enrage him, I stopped resisting and stood still, waiting for him to regain his composure. After a moment, Ethan Shaw's lost composure began to return. He gripped my head, looked into my eyes, and said in a hoarse voice, "Emily, I regret it. I regret divorcing you. I don't care about the children anymore. As long as we remarry, you can have children if you want, or not, it's entirely up to you. Even if you want to go out and work, I'll fully support you." Hearing these words from Ethan Shaw's mouth was truly a miracle. After all, in my previous life, I made a fortune from stock trading and used it to buy a shop and open a milk tea store, and he still thought I was too ambitious. Seeing that I couldn't break free, I turned my head away with a hint of disgust, suppressing the anger in my heart, and said after a moment, "Ethan Shaw, we're already divorced. We're two unrelated individuals now. You're not the kind of person who can't move on. You should move forward. But I regret it. Emily, can we start over again?" His gaze shifted to me, and he swallowed hard, speaking in a restrained tone. "I know I had many flaws in the past, but believe me, I never intended to betray you. The matter with Jiang Ness was a momentary lapse of judgment, driven by my own foolish vanity. I no longer have any feelings for her. She's been fired, and I promise she'll never bother you again. I married you because I loved you, not for any other reason." I paused for a moment, looked up at him, and said in an unusually calm tone, "It doesn't matter whether I regret it or not, because I don't love you anymore. A marriage without love is just an empty shell, nothing but a facade. Counting my previous life, I've already endured over 20 years of a marriage like this. I've had enough. Emily." As a warm male voice rang out, I turned my head and saw Ryan and his 4-year-old daughter Yara standing at the corner of the store. "Daddy, it's Auntie." The little girl was holding a string of candied hawthorn berries, speaking in a babyish voice, and was about to run toward me when Ryan quickly stopped her. Seeing the father and daughter's actions, Ethan Shaw's eyes flashed with anger, and the corners of his mouth curled into a mocking smile. "So you really do have a new lover. Emily, you rejected me for the second-hand goods? Do you really want to be someone else's stepmother? How pathetic." Ethan Shaw's impulsive words slipped out. I took a deep breath, tilted my head slightly upward, and admitted it bluntly, "You're right. I'd rather be someone else's stepmother, give birth to children for another man, than be with you or have your child." Under Ethan Shaw's icy, menacing gaze, I smiled silently. My words and posture were like a knife to the heart, striking Ethan Shaw right where it hurt the most. Noticing he had relaxed slightly, I clenched my lips tightly, prying his fingers off my arm one by one, then flung them away forcefully. On the way back, the atmosphere was awkward. I thought for a moment and explained, "That was my ex-husband. He's a bit. That's why I said those things to drive him away. Don't take it to heart." I tapped my head, feeling a bit embarrassed. "I know I didn't think much of it." Ryan smiled gently. Speaking of which, my encounter with Ryan began because of his daughter. It wasn't until we got to know each other that I found out he was a university professor, one of the most promising young people in the area. Because he loved reading, Ryan had the refined demeanor of a gentleman, with a strong scholarly air. He was also tall and well-built. If it weren't for his ex-wife insisting on divorcing him during the overseas migration trend, the three of them would have lived a happy life. Lost in my thoughts, I didn't notice Ryan hesitating beside me until Yara ran off to buy some fortune sticks. In the narrow alley filled with children's laughter, Ryan suddenly stopped, turned to look at me, and couldn't help but say, "Emily, what you just said." Before he could finish, I exclaimed, "Oh. It's snowing again." I stretched out my hand, letting the snowflakes fall onto my palm, cold yet reluctant to withdraw it. "Do you know? It wasn't until I came here that I saw snow for the first time. It's so white and beautiful, it's really picturesque." Then I blinked and smiled at him, saying, "By the way, I'm moving. I bought a shop with a place to live on 5th Avenue and plan to start a business there. I won't be coming here much anymore, except to visit my parents. Little girls love to play and eat, so please keep an eye on her. After all, these days, you can't be too careful with strangers." Ryan was such a smart person. Hearing me say that, he understood everything. After a long while, he withdrew his gaze, turned to look at Yara in front of him, and forced a smile, saying, "Then I'll wish you a prosperous business in advance." "I'll take your word for it." After saying that, I walked over to the little girl, knelt down, and slipped a large red envelope into her pocket. After parting ways with the two of them, I hurried into my aunt's courtyard house and finally let out a sigh of relief. Inside, my aunt was lying in a rocking chair listening to the radio. Hearing the sound, she turned her head and looked at me with a smile, asking, "Did you have a good time today?" "Earlier, Mrs. Lee came over and told me she saw you and Ryan from the neighboring courtyard coming back together. What were the two of you doing?" Before the old lady could finish, I hurriedly explained, "There's nothing to it. We just happened to run into each other on the way, and Yara was there too." Seeing my evasive expression, the old lady sighed and couldn't help but advise, "Actually, for someone like you who's divorced after a second marriage, Ryan is the best choice. Although he has a 4-year-old daughter, Yara is well-behaved and understanding, and she also likes you, so you don't need to worry about getting along with her in the future. I've lived here for over 30 years and know this neighborhood inside out. Ryan's parents are reasonable people, and Ryan himself is kind and of good character. You're a woman after all. There's no need to be too stubborn. You should consider it." I knew the old lady was trying to look out for me. After all, most people's minds are still quite narrow these days, far from the openness of 20 years ago. The girl is indeed quite well behaved, but being her stepmother is out of the question. I can't speak too harshly to the old lady. After all, she truly means well for me. As she said, Ryan and his family are indeed good people. But I just want to live the rest of my life freely, and it's simply not meant to be with him. So I sat down, took her arm, and spoke from the bottom of my heart. Being with Ryan, no matter how good he and his family are, I would inevitably have to compromise myself. Hearing this, the old woman was momentarily confused. I decided to be even more straightforward and hypothetical. If I were to marry Ryan in the future, no matter how much Yara liked me, he would have to balance the relationship between me and her. There would inevitably be conflicts and friction, and I don't think I could compete with a child. Besides, I'm a selfish person with no sense of sacrifice or dedication. I'm really not interested in being a stepmother. After all, raising a child is difficult enough with your own, let alone someone else's. And there's Yara's biological mother. She's just abroad. What if she comes back one day? No one knows how Ryan and Yara will treat her. If they both can't let her go, what will I do then? When it comes to first loves, white knights, or ex-wives, I'm truly scared and have no interest whatsoever. Seeing the old lady still trying to persuade me, I rested my chin on my hand and said earnestly, "Remarriage has always been a difficult choice. Marrying someone stronger is called being swallowed up, and marrying someone weaker is called throwing yourself at them. Auntie, I'm a businesswoman, I'm the best at calculating costs. That's why I've never considered remarriage. Marriage has never been the only option for women. I no longer need marriage to prove my worth. I have money, a house, and a brain. I certainly don't lack love." In the end, the old lady gave up on me completely. She could see that I was living a fulfilling and happy life now, and that the mundane details of daily life no longer suited me. After we talked it out, I started expanding my business empire and got into the real clothing business, no longer just dabbling. As my business grew bigger and bigger, Ethan Shaw came back, trying to win me back. But even then, I never gave him a single kind word. Whether he pretended to be drunk and spoke sweetly or played the victim, I saw him as nothing but a clown. After all, the pain he caused me was real, and even though the wounds have healed, the scars remain. I don't believe in getting back together. I believe in karma, and I want it to keep coming back to him until he dies. Why should I forgive him just because he says he's sorry? Why should I pretend nothing ever happened? Seeing my cold gaze, Ethan Shaw stopped pressuring me and instead adopted a softer approach. After earning enough money to live comfortably for the rest of my life, I bought a villa with a large garden in a third-tier city and began a reclusive retirement life, keeping myself as far away from Ethan Shaw as possible. After all, if I didn't go out, he couldn't bother me. And so, I ignored Ethan Shaw for 20 years. Until the year he turned 45, when he was unexpectedly diagnosed with late-stage lung cancer. As Ethan Shaw lay on the hospital bed, clinging to life, the Shaw family couldn't help but call me, but I didn't answer until the doctor declared him dead. As I had said before, I truly never forgave him for a single day of my life. Past life epilogue. Upon hearing the news that Emily had fallen down the stairs and died on the spot, Ethan Shaw and Xiao Annie rushed back home one after the other. In the dimly lit room, Xiao Annie entered and saw Ethan Shaw clutching his mother's body in a frenzy. "Emily, stop pretending. You just wanted me to come back, didn't you? Now I'm back. How much longer do you plan to keep this up? If you hadn't been so stubborn, growing increasingly indifferent toward me and always acting like nothing mattered, I never would have thought to use Jiang Ness to provoke you." Unable to bear seeing Ethan Shaw treat his own mother so disgustingly, Xiao Annie pushed him away with all her strength, clutching Emily's body tightly to prevent him from touching it. She said with a look of disgust, "My mother is dead. Who are you trying to impress with your fake affection? Just as my mother said, you're nothing but a despicable person." Recalling the past, Xiao Annie's eyes filled with tears as she choked out, "When she was alive, all she wanted was your respect as a husband. But what did you do? You were busy flirting with your mistress, acting all lovey-dovey. Don't try to say it was unintentional, you truly hurt her. If it weren't for me, afraid that you and that woman would bully me, she would have left this place long ago to live a life without you." Her voice was filled with sorrow. Refusing to let Ethan Shaw off the hook, she pulled apart the jade bead bracelet on Emily's wrist and pointed to the scar, which had healed but still looked gruesome. "She cut it herself after giving birth to me, suffering from postpartum depression and nervous exhaustion." "What were you doing then? You were mocking her for being unreasonable, for being unworthy. She clearly said she wasn't feeling well, but you never cared. All of you bullied her." Xiao Annie screamed in despair. She knew she had lost the mother who loved her most. I didn't know, He opened his mouth several times but couldn't say a word. Xiao Annie wiped her tears frantically, but they only flowed more. Whenever Ethan Shaw approached, she would claw and kick him, wanting to kill him to vent her anger. After Emily's funeral, Ethan Shaw began to drink heavily. 3 years later, exhausted and powerless, he was sidelined by Xiao Annie, who took full control of the company. Since Ethan Shaw had only this one daughter, the company directors dared not say a word even if they were dissatisfied. Xiao Annie, who had been biding her time for years, did not disappoint. As soon as she took charge, she began sweeping reforms. She first halted cooperation with Jiang Ness Company, withdrew funds, and unilaterally announced permanent termination of the partnership, citing severe formaldehyde levels exceeding safety standards in the construction materials. As a newly established company less than a year old, it couldn't withstand such pressure from Xiao Annie. Soon, internal issues began to surface. Without Ethan Shaw backing them up, no clients dared to work with them, wages couldn't be paid, and employees started causing trouble. Jiang Ness was left scrambling in desperation. In the end, with no other options, they had no choice but to beg Ethan Shaw for help. Upon hearing this, Xiao Annie kicked open the door, raised her hand, and slapped her across the face. "Now I'm the one in charge of the Xiao family. You always boast about being a strong, independent woman. What? A strong woman isn't strong without a man?" Xiao Annie delivered a barrage of sarcasm, not giving Jiang Ness a chance to defend herself. She pointed at Ethan Shaw and said, "What a pity. He's just an old man with no real power. If you really want to marry him, go ahead. After all, I've already taken over the company smoothly, and he's been fed by my mother for years, so he's long since lost his ability to have children. Someone who can serve him wholeheartedly without asking for money, I'm more than happy to let my daughter do that. When Xiao Annie said this, everyone was shocked and smiled bitterly. It turned out she never believed me from the start. Ethan Shaw's face was filled with bitterness. He suddenly realized he had lived his life as a joke. Humph, believe you? I'd rather believe a sow can climb a tree. Xiao Annie sneered. Because Emily had a significant influence on Xiao Annie, she ultimately chose not to marry. Even if she wanted a child, she would go to a sperm bank to select high-quality sperm and conceive on her own. Thus, the two lived their lives in their respective timelines, each believing they were happy. At that moment, it was the hottest time of the year in Savannah. There was no breeze on the balcony, and Ethan Shaw leaned against the railing, looking carefree and lazy. As Xiao Annie would say, he didn't deserve her. Not only that, but she had always ignored Ethan Shaw's request to be buried together in his later years. You've disgusted my mother for a lifetime, how could I possibly let you harm her again and tarnish her reincarnation path? Ethan Shaw left this world with regrets. But after an unknown period of time, when he opened his eyes again, he found himself back in his youth. He couldn't tell if it was a dream or reality. All he knew was that Emily was still alive, vibrant and beautiful, even more captivating than the year they first met. Due to some differences, they had divorced, their daughter was gone, and their relationship had plummeted to an icy coldness. Ethan Shaw thought that if he was sincere enough and treated her well, she would eventually forgive him. But even when he was diagnosed with lung cancer and tortured by chemotherapy until he wished he were dead, she showed no signs of softening. He finally realized that Emily truly hated him with all her heart.